and welcome to our full council today, Thursday the 21st of March at 9:30. This will be a virtual meeting with remote attendance by councillors and remote access of press and public, and will be held in accordance with the provisions of the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings England and Wales regulations 2020. I'd like to welcome the public, the press and Islands FM this morning, and I'll first of all hand over to our monitoring officer Stephen Taylor for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will go through the list of members in the same order as on the agenda. So, Councillor Dean.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Francis. Present. Councillor Marcus.
Present.
Councillor Roger.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Lady Barclay and Councillor Dorian Smith have sent their apologies. Councillor Mrs. Grottick.
Present.
Councillor Guy. Councillor Guy?
I think he may be working.
Fine. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Mumford.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nellams.
Present.
And Councillor Sims.
Present.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to remind councillors, please, to stay on mute if they would, whilst the meeting proceeds, and only come off mute when they wish to speak. Thank you. And I would also remind you that all votes will be counted as for, unless specified against or abstention. So that's how we'll run that. Thank you. First of all, item 1 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do I have any, please? Councillor Watt.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 12, as my wife is currently employed by the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I'll declare an interest in any debate that touches on direct employment of staff in waste and recycling due to the employment of my wife in that area.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations, please? No? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 2 on the agenda, which are the minutes of our previous meeting. Do we have any issues or concerns around those previous minutes, please? No, then could I have a proposer for their adoption? Councillor Mumford, and seconder, please. Councillor Grottick, thank you. Any councillor against the adoption of the minutes, please? Thank you, then they're carried. Chairman's announcements as item 3. I have no announcement to make other than to remind members that the pre-election period has started as the notice of election has been published. So I would be grateful if members could kindly be aware of this, should they intend to stand for election in May, not to use this meeting to promote themselves and their undoubted qualities. On that point, any member of the public listening who may be interested in standing for election can find the nomination pack and other information on the council's website, or they can contact the council's elections officer. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda are questions under Standing Order 14, which I have none. Item 5 on the agenda is consider reports from committees, including the receipt of minutes and or draft minutes for information. Councillor Mumford, would you like to say anything about scrutiny, please?
Yes, I present the minutes from the last meeting. I don't know if there's any questions. Anybody got any questions? take it that everybody's read it. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all my members of Scrutiny, past and present, for their support, especially Councillor Sims, my Vice Chairman, and a big thank you to Bob Dawson, the Officer for Scrutiny, who was such a great help to me. I'm sorry I forgot to thank everybody at our last meeting, so this is the only opportunity I have now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have also had a local outbreak engagement board, which I chaired. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. Thank you. Chief Executive, do you wish to say anything on this item?
Only, Chairman, obviously a big thank you to all our colleagues in the NHS and for our community in the remarkable take-up of the vaccine across the islands. Obviously, this is absolutely key to us coming out of this lockdown and trying to encourage all we can for people to take up the offer of the vaccine is incredibly important. I do understand, of course, there are some people who have ongoing concerns surrounding the virus, but in the view of the Council, with its joint responsibility for public health alongside Public Health England, and of course on the advice of Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, our advice is the same, that we urge everybody when they're offered the vaccine to please consider taking up the offer, as it's important to protect both yourself and your community and to help us put back some normality into the way that we carry out our lives. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. And we also have a committee, the Health and Wellbeing Board meeting. Councillor Williams, would you like to say anything about the Health and Wellbeing Board, please?
Yeah, clearly we don't have the draft minutes today, but we had a productive meeting where we touched on issues around mental health, which I think is very important for us to keep an eye on. And I can't remember what else, Chairman, but it was a very useful meeting, and I'll update more in due course.
No, I will agree with you. It was a very good meeting, as well as scrutiny. So thank you very much for your chairmanship of that, Councillor Williams. Okay, so I will now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12, which I have none. Item 7 is urgent items, which I have none. So we move on to item 8, which is part 1, requiring a decision. And the first item is the Prevent and Channel Assurance, which is in the hands of Aisling Khan, Senior Manager for Services to our community. Thank you, Aisling.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. So the purpose of this report is to give assurance to members that we are discharging our prevent and channel duties and tidy up a few bits of governance following the departure of the Senior Manager for Infrastructure and Planning. This will then hopefully enable the timely submission of the assurance statement to the Home Office. With me on the call, I hope, is Steve Rowell, who is the lead officer for the Cornwall and Argosville Prevent Board, who will also be able to answer any questions you may have. Given the relatively low numbers of referrals and our current risk profile, it makes sense to work in partnership across our two areas, particularly in relation to our shared police resources. Further to me submitting this report, it's all been approved by the Community Safety Partnership, and Councillor Mike Nellams, who holds this portfolio, might also want to assure members that we are fulfilling our statutory duties.
Thank you.
Steve, are you on the call?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman. Essentially, I think Ashley has just hit the nail on the head. This is a report that outlines the statutory duties and the guidance issued by the Home Office in relation to prevent. The report details the requirements, and in response to that, each local authority is required to issue an assurance statement, which basically sort of clarifies the local authority's position in relation to each strand of that assurance statement. From our perspective, working jointly, the economies of scale speak for themselves. We've had a recent inspection towards the end of January this year by the National Police Counter-Terrorism Headquarters, Metropolitan Police, to basically ensure that we are being as compliant as we possibly can and no issues were identified. So in terms of the statement that's been circulated to members of the council and the accompanying documents, I also give my assurance that we are fully compliant with those aspects, and this report's brought to your attention for information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowell. Councillor Nellums, would you like to say anything on this matter?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Steve and Ashley for the work that they've done to have this ready to be put through back to the Home Office in time for April the 9th. They've done a lot of work on it. It makes a lot of sense, and thank you very much both.
Thank you. So we have two recommendations, councillors. So could I please have a proposer for the adoption of those recommendations? Councillor Marcus, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Grottick.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to ask a question. So what does this mean for the island on the ground? Is there going to be any more activity, or? Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
So that's a great question. So we have got a local implementation plan that goes through CSP. So a lot of that is around training. So one of the things I think will be really useful when we have the new administration in place is to do some revised training for all your duties as members. We do lots of work with schools. Schools are utterly compliant in meeting their kind of obligations in terms of young people. And we do regular multi-agency training about the identification of vulnerabilities. So I'm quite confident about the activity levels on CILI itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Steve might have some further input there, actually.
Yes, would you like to come back, Steve, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just in addition to that, there is a local delivery plan as well, which outlines all the work that we're undertaking jointly to mitigate risk and threat, which has been identified in the counter-terrorism local plan. That plan is just being refreshed for the next 12 months, due to be issued in about 2 months. And certainly, my recommendation will be that the key findings of that counter-terrorism local plan are brought to members of the council and certainly the Community Safety Partnership. And consequently, to the issue of that new counter-terrorism plan, there will be another new delivery plan to mitigate risk and threat on the islands.
That'd be great. Yeah, so if the Community Safety Partnership can have some oversight, I don't know whether scrutiny can have a hand in that as well, in terms of scrutinising the CSP, making sure those objectives are delivered and are beneficial for the island.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands up, but is anyone else wishing to ask a question on this, please? No, thank you. So could we go back to the recommendations, please? Do I have a proposer for the two recommendations? Councillor Mumford, thank you. And a seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Councillor Marcus, thank you very much. Any councillor against the adoption of these recommendations? No, and they're carried. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the report. So we move on now to item 9 on the agenda, which is the adoption of our local plan in the hands of our Senior Officer for Planning and Development, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So just as a point of correction in the report, paragraph 7 references the plan being submitted to the Secretary of State on the 30th of September 2020. That should read 30th of September 2019. So a new development plan document can only be adopted through a full council decision following an extensive review of key issues in accordance with the legislative and regulatory framework and taking into account the national planning policy and guidance. The development of a local plan must engage with statutory stakeholders, elected members of the community, and demonstrate appropriate and statutory consultation and how and what steps the authority has taken to engage and address those consulted and address the issues raised. The Planning Department have, over the last 6 years, prepared and consulted on a new local plan to replace the 2005 local plan, a 2020 vision. The team has put together extensive background research, a statement of community involvement, a number of local development schemes to timetable the work, undertaken extensive householder surveys and produced a number of technical pieces of work, all to understand the development needs of the islands and how these can be effectively managed over a 15-year period, whilst protecting the extensive designations, constraints, historic building structures, archaeology, habitats, and delicate ecosystems that make up our exceptional environment, as well as meet the needs of the social and economic needs of a very small, multi-island, isolated community. And I hope that members can gauge from the report the breadth and scope of work undertaken to get to this stage. In January 2020, the department hosted the appointed planning inspector in the Wesleyan Chapel for 3 days, whereas formal examination in public took place. The council were given the opportunity to explain the policies and the positions taken in the plan. The examination was open to the public, with those who had engaged being invited to speak. Following the examination, a number of actions were taken away and further work carried out. Works were stalled somewhat during the period of lockdown, but what emerged following the examination were a number of issues that the inspector recommended could be addressed through a number of modifications to the plan. These were subject to further public consultation, of which the inspector reviewed the consultation responses. And as of the 23rd of February this year, he submitted his final report and recommendations to this authority. As you'll note from the report, the inspector has been satisfied that the previously identified soundness issues, subject to the modifications already consulted on, do result in a sound plan that can be adopted by this authority, and officers have compiled the modifications into a light version of the plan at Appendix C, and this will be worked up into a final print version in terms of attaching the policy maps and monitoring information that will be available both online and at our deposit venues on each of the islands. And it's therefore recommended that members can now adopt the new local plan as per the recommendations set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and could I take this opportunity to thank you and your team very much for all the hard work that you've done on this over the last few years. Councillor Marcus, would you like to speak on this, please?
Yes, I would. Brilliant. Well done. I'd like to thank everyone that's worked in the department over the last 6 years. A big thanks to Lisa, who's seen this one through, and Craig as well, who's Craig Dryden, who has inputted loads, but also to Andrew and other people that have Kieran and Emma and other people that I can't remember. They've also added loads to the plan. It's really good to finally hit this milestone. Me and Lisa were talking the other day and congratulating ourselves on finishing this, and then she reminded me that it's not actually finished. There's more stuff to do with the policy maps and then monitoring the plan as well. So it's a really good, brilliant milestone, and hopefully it'll make life easier for applicants and the council in terms of judging and evaluating planning applications over the next 5 years. With that, I'd like to propose the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak on this, or will I take a seconder? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm certainly willing to second this. It's a great bit of work, and I think we should be really proud of this. Just one question I just want to briefly ask Lisa, because it's been quite a live issue in terms of the policy of the minimum and maximum sizes of dwellings. And I think that has changed slightly with the modifications in the plan. Could you just comment on that in terms of the 30% minimum and maximum sizes?
Yes, so So for household extensions, for replacement dwellings and for new local need housing, they should achieve the minimum nationally described space standards that are national standard, and our policies align with those. What the inspector picked up on in the examination in public is he understood the intent of the policy also sought to assist in affordability. So he said your policy as written and as submitted didn't capture that, and he recommended a maximum. And that was what we consulted on back in last autumn. Amendments to those policies for domestic extensions and replacement dwellings, and policy LC3, which is the design balanced housing stock, captured a 30% above the national standard as a maximum. So those apply to permanently occupiable homes.
Yeah, I think that's very positive. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Chairman. Happy to second it.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. Does anybody else wish to come in, please? No? Well, I have a proposer and seconder. Is there any councillor against the adoption of our local plan, please? No? Then it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Lisa. So, item 10 on our agenda is the planning application P21002. Again, in your hands, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is brought before Council on the basis that the proposals are for 12 new homes, and the application is submitted by the Council's Housing Enabling Team as part of their commitment to deliver 30 local need homes within 5 years. A couple of points of clarification to the report. It's the applicant's intention that the roads and green spaces will be owned and managed by a community group or community land trust once established, not the council. The surfacing of the roads and paths will be agreed later and will ensure compliance with the need to allow the permeable paving subbase or gullies and channels if tarmac is the option for roads, and that's dependent on the gradient of those roads. I'd also propose that recommendation 2 is amended to ensure that any changes to conditions is agreed with the lead member for planning. And there's also an update on the consultation with Historic England, which came in yesterday. So following the submission of amendments to the scheme, which has seen a reduction in the number of dwellings down from 13 to 12, whilst Historic England recognise and welcome the steps taken to retain an open western corner of the site, they remain of the opinion that the harm could be reduced further by reverting to an earlier layout as identified in the design and access statement. So in the view of Historic England, the scheme has not fully addressed the harm of too significant to the setting of Enna Castle as far as possible. So Historic England has concerns regarding the application on heritage grounds and recommends further amendments or safeguards. In addressing national policy requirements with respect to the historic environment, officers have taken into account the harm to the setting of Enna Castle as a scheduled monument and have balanced both the need to safeguard irreplaceable heritage assets with the wider community benefits of delivering local need homes. The applicant has confirmed that an earlier iteration of the layout of the site included in the design and access statement was not possible to bring forward due to the slope of the site and the need to avoid more of the northern side on that basis. In seeking to deliver a viable scheme and balance the drainage and the biodiversity issues, the applicant has sought to address the historic environment concerns as fully as possible. There are a number of conditions that seek to ensure that the homes are both restricted to the layout shown as well as in height to ensure that the western corner of the site remains as open as possible to preserve the intervisibility and the views of Enna Castle from the north. So whilst recognising concerns of Historic England have not been sufficiently addressed, officers do consider the application to be acceptable. Overall, the proposals are in outline, but extensive information has been provided to ensure full consideration can be made as to the impact upon the character and appearance of the conservation area. In addition to the national validation requirements, plans and reports, this application recognises and addresses local validation requirements, and as such, this application also includes detailed assessments of drainage, and this is on the basis of the sloping nature of the site and the close proximity to the Lower Moors SSSI, the neighbouring land uses, and to ensure appropriate solutions can be identified and put in place to prevent any increase in flood risks, which are essential to safeguard safeguard the adjoining land from flooding and or groundwater contamination as a result of the proposed development. The application also considers careful consideration of site layout and illustrative plans and elevations of potential house types, as well as a clear set of design codes have been provided. And this is to establish both a flexible approach to the final appearance of the homes, whilst ensuring appropriate scale, design and sustainability is achieved without adversely impacting on the wider landscape. The application also includes transport assessments and residential travel plan. So these have been submitted to consider both the impact of the development on the existing roadwork in terms of an increase in vehicular movements that could be expected, and to demonstrate achievable vehicular access to and from the site, as well as car parking provisions. These reports demonstrate that safe vehicular access can be achieved from the site, adequate car parking can be delivered, as well as measures to encourage walking and cycling. The development also includes a proposal to install electric vehicle chargers within the car parking area. The application also includes ecological surveys, topographical surveys, ground investigation reports, and geotechnical and geo-environmental survey reports, as well as a land quality statement. And these demonstrate that careful assessments have been carried out to consider both the wider baseline biodiversity value of the site, the existing ground conditions, as well as the potential for existing ground contamination and the level of risk associated with using the site for the proposed development. The application considers heritage with a heritage appraisal and provides an assessment of the existing site and the potential impact of the proposed development and whether it would have an adverse impact on designated heritage assets. The application also includes arboricultural assessment. So in conjunction with some of the other reports, the arboricultural impact assessment considers the existing trees on the site and makes recommendations in light of the proposed development in order to safeguard or replace existing trees on the site in the interest of protecting or mitigating harm to the wider natural environment. So as you'll note from the report, it's considered that the level of detail submitted has provided assurances to the authority on the impact of the proposal will have on the wider landscape as both an AONP and conservation area, as well as issues such as highway safety, biodiversity and infrastructure. So officers consider that while subsequent applications will need to address some of the important implementations of site-wide infrastructure and landscaping, site-specific sustainable design measures, the recommended conditions will ensure infrastructure is provided before individual applications are submitted to develop the plots of each, and each plot will need to address the plot-specific sustainable design and waste management in addition to connections to the infrastructure. Due to the proximity of the SSSI and to protect adjoining landowners and minimise the impact of flooding or groundwater contamination, it would be critical that the drainage condition is also put in place, including the long-term measures to maintain its drainage solution. And similarly, the implementation of a construction environment management scheme will mitigate both the development contamination as well as ensure good ground conditions are safe in the long term for residents. In order to ensure that no important archaeological remains are lost, there is also a specific condition to carry out targeted trial trenching before groundworks are carried out. Landscaping has been identified as a critical issue both in terms of site-wide screening, filtering pollution, biodiversity enhancement and habitat provision, and this is reflected in conditions C16 and C19, which seek to ensure that the site and the wider landscape benefits from a well-considered and managed environment. Careful consideration is being given to the design of the housing, which will be guided by a clear set of design codes, and these together with the approved site layout, levels and height restrictions will ensure the development respects both the historic nature of Old Town but also ensures high quality and sustainable homes whilst reflecting a traditional Solonian design. So that the layout, height restrictions and the illustrative plans demonstrate the size of homes proposed would be of a scale that will both accord with the space standard requirements of the new local plan and will be of a size that is more likely to be attainable in terms of affordability needs. So finally, I think it's important to understand that an alternative option has been put forward to control the long-term occupancy of the homes, and consideration has been given to the use of principal residence conditions for the development. The recommendation has, however, reflected on the potential inconsistencies of switching to achieving the same level of effectiveness with a planning condition and the potential long-term enforcement issues and the in perpetuity security this would offer. So So whilst it is recognised that the council cannot enter into a legal agreement under this current application and the use of planning conditions may offer some short-term solutions to financing, the benefits of this approach do not outweigh the effectiveness of a legal agreement, and officers have concluded that there are no reasons why a legal agreement cannot be entered into in the usual manner as part of the determination of each of the reserve matters applications. Clearly there's a need to make decisions in accordance with the development plan, of which the emerging local plan is now in a position to be adopted, and I think we've just agreed that in the earlier item on the agenda. This identifies housing needs on the island, and this site is included as a means to achieve the spatial strategy and one of the key objectives of the local plan. Overall, the outline application, subject to the conditions set out, is considered to be acceptable and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus.
Thanks. I'd like to thank the team that put together the application. There's loads of detail in there, which is really interesting to read, if quite long. A couple of technical points, I think. In the representations, one of the representations at the start mentions, from the local flood authority, mentions that there's enough space on site to contain stormwater for a 1 in 100 years plus 40% events. What's that plus 40%? Is that... Do you know?
Yeah, I do.
Sorry.
I can't come to the answer without looking back at the report. I think I did cover it in there, and there's a condition that does require that. I can't remember what the answer is.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that there is obviously the one representation we received, which is in favour of the application, does mention the flooding on the site. Also, another representation which is supported does mention that as well. And just looking at the datum, the relief maps of the site, one of the plots is half below that 5 metre line as well. So it would be good just to make sure that we can understand that. Also, it mentions a community group as well, so it'd be quite interesting. I don't know if this is a planning matter, but what happens if that community group does not achieve its goal, does not get set up? Will the council step in to pave the roads and look after the roads and do those things? Is that a discussion you've had with the applicant?
No, so the plus 40% is the kind of buffer to make sure it is as safe as it can be in terms of any increase in surface water drainage and any problems with it. It's a buffer that's intended to cover that eventuality of extreme conditions. I have not had a conversation about what happens if community group isn't established and what the council will do. No, I've not had that conversation. It is currently their intention to establish with the self-builders who take on the plots to establish, and they will have to sign up to an agreement about the management of the roads, paths and landscaping around the site. I don't know what the outcome will be. I suspect the council may have to consider taking on adoption of those spaces, but I don't have that answer at the moment.
Okay, and that's not really something we can judge here as part of this application, is that?
No, I don't think it's relevant to the consideration of this application. It will have to be managed, and that is very important, and that's clear in the conditions, in terms of construction environmental management plan, and I think it's the drainage condition. These require them to provide us with the details of who's responsible for the management and maintenance, particularly the drainage of the site and the roads and the pathways and the landscaping.
Cool. And so just to clarify, Historic England, they're not particularly, they don't list objections about the development, but you're happy as the officer responsible that the application is as best it can be in terms of that perceived harm to the views of Enna Castle?
Yeah, so in terms of balancing that harm, so they have identified some harm to the views of Enna Castle as a result of the development. They would prefer the site was kept, the strip was undeveloped on the west boundary. The application sort of has more of an angled alignment and keeps the western corner open because that isn't a developable part of the site. But in the interest of balancing the viability and delivering, maximising the number of homes they can achieve in a viable way, they've had to bring some of the sites down from that north boundary in the western corner down the site, which, in my view, outweighs the less than substantial harm to the impact on the visibility of the castle.
Okay, fine. And you mentioned about infrastructure getting developed on site before the houses are built. That can be a separate report back to council. I'm just trying to get my head around what future councils will expect to see in terms of this site, in terms of both sites.
Yeah, there's conditions that are pre-commencement. So if these things haven't been put in, all of these conditions will bite for whoever comes in with the first application to build on that site. You have to satisfy all those pre-commencement conditions, and I'd expect the council would seek to do that wholesale, as opposed to expecting individuals to do that.
Okay, and just the last thing for clarity, even though there is no 106 agreement on this planning application, we are expecting each house builder to have a 106 on every property that they build.
Yes, so if when reserved matters applications come in, we can then enter into a legal agreement as the local planning authority with those individuals. Once they've taken ownership of those plots, they can enter into a legal agreement to control the occupation of those homes, and that can be put on at the reserved matters stage.
Okay, thank you. That's it from me for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. 3 points from me first. Number one, on the islands, because of our heritage, which is obviously very important, there will always be a balance to be struck between historic monuments and the present need for housing. I think the planning officer has articulated very well the balance that we need to have, and I would say that in this particular instance, I think the need for homes does outweigh any slight damage to historical monuments. So that's my first point. Secondly, members will note, as the lead member for planning has noted, concerns about flood risk, and I would just like the planning officer to clarify that there will be ongoing discussions to monitor how we can best manage this together with obviously the people who are going to build their homes, and so that we can come to an amicable arrangement and work with them to make sure that the site is safe and a pleasant place to live in. Thirdly, I totally agree and had written it down on my notes with the lead member for planning that tenure in the long term is incredibly important to protect the housing for the long-term needs of people who are resident on these islands. Thank you.
Should I come back on that point? The second point about ongoing management of the flood risk, because it is critically important, and it's not just in terms of flooding, it's in terms of groundwater protection and the ecosystem of the Lower Moors Triple SI, as well as the ground conditions of neighbouring land uses. So putting in the drainage and the holding tanks for the water that, we're going to have an increase in surface water drainage. They're going to need to be permeable and capture, and those solutions are going to have to be maintained forever unless we come up with something else and take them out. They're going to have to do anything. So the condition they're going to need to satisfy has to be, clear and understood and monitored. And part of the management of the site, it's important to understand who is responsible and how often they maintain those systems.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly agree with the concerns around flood risk. I'm glad that's been clarified. And I was also a bit confused by the 106, and again, that's been clarified, so I agree with the points that have been raised there. It's not a planning reason per se, but I've voiced concerns in other meetings about road safety for children and other people using the site. I'd like to put them on public record again today. I'd like any alternative solutions to be explored for safe routes to school and other reasons for leaving the site. As I see it, for a child walking to school from the site, they've got to cross the road 4 times. They've got to cross from the site to the pavement on the side of the old chapel, then walk down to where the blind corner is at Blue Cottage to cross the road again, then walk down to Old Town Cafe to cross the road over to the seawall pavement, and then finally cross the road onto the school site. So 4 crossings and a 5-minute walk is far from ideal at a time we're trying to encourage safe routes to school and safe cycling and safe walking. So I'd like any alternative solutions to be explored on that particular issue. And I'm very mindful we've got a later application on the agenda today, which is also looking at roads and access. So it's just very much in my mind at the moment. And the other question I had was, if a prospective self-builder wanted to not build a house to the size on the outline plan which we've got today, they just wanted a modest bungalow, a 1 or 2 bedroom bungalow to suit their needs, whatever their lifestyle is. Would that be permissible, or are we sort of boxing people into having a 3-bedroom, 2-storey house as opposed to something smaller?
There's nothing to stop a person coming up with their own design, but it would likely require them to apply for full planning permission, because what they are applying at the reserve master stage is purely the appearance. So they will come in with an application for the reserve masters, which is the appearance of that house, which is on the fixed footprint, the fixed plot of a maximum height. There's a design code to feed into what it will look like. If they want to come in with something completely different, we'll have to consider it with what everyone else wants to do on that site and how it fits in terms of its character, its impact on that overall aesthetic of what they've tried to achieve. But there's nothing to stop a person coming in with a full application to saying, oh, well, I want to build just a bungalow. And I guess that's a conversation they will have to have with the housing enabling team in terms of how that impacts upon the rest of the plots. But it's not impossible.
Thank you. Thank you. Elisa, do you wish to comment on the children's school?
So, obviously you're correct that any family on there with school-age children will have to walk through Old Town. I mean, Old Town is, there are a high number of children who walk from Old Town to the school, and I agree that this is an additional crossing point for these children. If there is a proposal to have an alternative footpath to connect that site to the school, that's not in my powers to say it can be achieved. It would require the council to talk to the landowners behind the site, but that is an opportunity for councillors to talk to the team about that in terms of their concerns with highway safety. The application has considered the impact, the speeds of traffic moving through Old Town, and has concluded that it is an acceptable development. It has footpaths within it that aren't physically connected to footpaths through Old Town. They do require them to cross the road, but because it's not uncommon for cyclists and pedestrians to share the road with vehicles, there is a kind of known expectation from drivers around the island that they do drive more carefully through Old Town.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I certainly agree with all the previous comments. I think it's an extremely detailed application. That's very commendable for the team that put it together. I think future applications, they should see this as the gold standards, really, in terms of applications. And whilst not all applications should be this detailed, it's a very commendable bar to set. In terms of the actual site itself, from an AONB perspective, I do think it's a regrettable loss of green space and habitat, but I also appreciate that it's been identified in the local plan and it has been largely supported, or at least not rejected by local people, barring the current tenants of the land. Just one point around the biodiversity scheme. I think it was good, but can I just check with Lisa, please, around any tree felling or hedge removal that needs to take place, that won't happen during nesting season, 1st of March to 1st of September? Is that? I wasn't quite clear whether that was a condition in the plan or not.
I will make sure that it's a clear part of the landscaping condition. I can't remember now either, and to tweak it in accordance with, I think it's recommendation 2, which is to sort of fine tune the conditions and agree those with the lead member to make sure. I think it is. I think it's baked in the recommendations of the ecological survey, which have fed into those conditions in terms of the biodiversity, landscaping, and the construction environment management plan, and also the landscaping condition. Yeah. So I'll make a note to make sure trees are not felled during season. I think the work it talks about checking. So they're checked already, but they will check before they carry out the works in terms of any habitat value. I think it is part of it, but I'll check.
Thank you. That'd be great. And just comment on the sustainable design measures, which is clearly commendable. I do think there's a little devil in the detail here in terms of how strongly they will be insisted on, particularly in relation to energy saving and renewable energy generation, because these are reserved matters, aren't they, for each application. I think it's essential that we are enabling and ensuring that future homes, which these homes could be here for 100 years or more, that they are low carbon and they're energy efficient. But I just think maybe there's a slight ambiguity as to how strongly those will be insisted on in each application. Would you like to comment on that?
Sorry. So there is a condition that requires them to submit sustainable design measures, and it is written, I think, intentionally quite open because it gives the flexibility for each plot owner to decide what they can afford and what they want to do in terms of the sustainability of each of the plots. I think we have to just take a consistent approach and ensure what we expect is the first ones that come along and what we accept from them isn't inconsistent. We don't have a standard by which they have to save X amount of money energy or carbon. We just want to make sure that it's thought about in terms of the fabric, in terms of the insulation, in terms of any water-saving devices they can put in, and in terms of any energy they can generate. It's mainly about the need to reduce water consumption and energy usage, as opposed to make it.
No, sure. I just think maybe there's a sort of lack of detail in the standards we're expecting, where one house might put on, for example, one solar panel and another put on 10. And that cost argument is a strong one. I get that for self-builder, but at the same time, I think we should be setting quite a high standard in terms of what we would expect to see there. Perhaps there's a discussion with the lead member for planning as well in the future.
Yeah, I think I think it's possibly going to be part of the. It's certainly my intention that we come up with a template for applicants to be able to clearly set out what it is they're doing to reduce or generate energy to save water. And that can possibly be a conversation we can have about the plot passports that the team are intending to put together in terms of just not only the design codes, but also the types of or level we would expect them to be hitting in terms of sustainable design. We can have that conversation with the Housing Enabling team.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Just like to thank Sean and the Housing Enabling team for all the work they've put in. As Councillor Smith just said, it's a very comprehensive application, and I think we've gone above and beyond what's expected. As far as the sustainability goes that Councillor Smith just mentioned, I think that's definitely to be addressed in the plot passports. Lots of standards will be addressed in those plot passports, and then they can all be addressed at the reserved matters application. So, I think we're so close now. We're nearly there. This has been a very long journey to get to where we are now, and this is outline planning permission. So there's still stages where we can have controls, and the plot passports will definitely do a lot of that. So I was hoping no one else's hands were going to be up, so I could propose that we accept the recommendations and move on. But I see Councillor Grottick's hand up as well. But I'll still propose the recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dean. Councillor Grottick.
Yeah, my hand is up with a very quick suggestion that since none of us know whether we're going to be in our seats or what jobs we might have after the election, that the planning officer might find it helpful to add in recommendation 2 that the minor changes required to conditions are discussed with both the lead member for planning and the lead member for housing. Yeah. Just in view of, extra input, perhaps. Thank you. Apart from that, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Chairman.
Thank you. Stephen Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. My only slight reservation with including the lead member for housing is, of course, that this is a council's own application, and housing is within the purview of Councillor Dean. So that will be the same as doing consultations with the developer, and I don't think that would be appropriate, and I'd actually defer somebody else to move it, if you don't mind, Councillor Dean.
Okay.
I don't want to be a small sport. I do apologise, but I think that perception-wise, I think it would be better if Councillor Marcus was moving, or indeed Councillor Grottick or any other member. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I will propose a recommendation. I'm sure Councillor Dean will get his moment on the road naming ceremony. I'll propose that recommendation.
Thank you. And the seconder we have Councillor Grottick. Do I have any councillors against these recommendations, please? No, then it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, item 11, again, planning application P20 090 Tregarthen's Hotel. Lisa, again, in your hands, please.
Thank you, Chair. Tregarthen's. This application is brought to full council on the basis that this scheme is an alternative to an earlier redevelopment approved at Tregarthen's site, which was also brought to members for a decision. There was one late representation which came in on the 9th of March following a reconsultation on the amended plans. But to note that this consultation actually ended on the 16th of February, but nonetheless it didn't get on the website until yesterday, so I will read that out to you. The owner has done very little to improve the exterior of the eyesore, which is Tregarthen's Hotel. His current proposal is to add more inferior dwellings, exacerbating the eyesore. It is proposed that these dwellings are sited in front of the refurbished block completed last year, comprising the view of the harbour of guests renting these suites and creating shadow. Is he considering the experience of guests in these already finished suites? He states that his development will help with the COVID crisis. This is a ridiculous comment, as by the time the units are built, the crisis will be over and we'll be vaccinated, and if COVID contamination is rife, then the units will not be allowed to function. He equates the development with glamping, and by so doing is admitting that it is not a hotel accommodation but something inferior. St Mary's already has glamping sites and a campsite for guests who can only afford a more economical experience. These sites are both hidden away from the main areas of the quay and the town. In his plan, the package involves a ladder and access to the bed, which pushes up against the wall, so it's not for the infirm or elderly. His staff already accommodated in the wallpack, so on finishing their shift must climb the Garrison Hill to live underground. I would ask you to consider this developer's attitude to Silly, his guests and his staff. He doesn't live here and has no intention of doing so. Compare his modus operandi with that of the owners of St Mary's Hall, who takes a real interest in the islands. When this developer has given St Mary's its next substandard accommodation, which is not in his backyard, but the backyard of St Mary's in perpetuity, and it's my opinion that he will seek to sell off the hotel as a timeshare, it will do nothing for the status of the hotel or facility in the long term. So that is a late representation that did not get on the website. In terms of the published report and the consideration of the application, then it's noted that the proposal seeks to develop 5 micro-lodges, which will be located in the former garden space and in place of a previously approved pair of semi-detached dwellings. The micro-lodges are part of the accommodation offer of the hotel on a semi-self-catering basis. The scheme has been slightly amended to address an objection from the Environment Agency and concerns of Historic England, and it would appear that the amendments have alleviated the concerns of both statutory consultees. As you'll note from the report, it's considered that the proposal will not have an adverse impact upon the setting of adjoining designated heritage assets and will have a neutral impact upon the character of the conservation area. The micro-lodges are proposed to be of a relatively low level and will be lower than the previously approved garden cottages. And whilst the structures will obscure the hotel, the original hotel garden, it's considered that it will have a positive impact in terms of the appearance of this current underused space and will not harm the scenic beauty of the A&B. South West Water have confirmed that the connection of the 5 micro-lodges can be supported in terms of drinking water supply, and that the installation of the private package treatment plant would be an acceptable means to dispose of foul drainage. This facility must be installed and maintained prior to the first occupation of any of the lodges. There are a number of conditions similar to those imposed on the previously approved scheme to ensure that sustainable design, water consumption standards and landscaping and biodiversity enhancements are all delivered at the site as part of this redevelopment. Subject to the conditions set out, it's considered that the proposal would deliver an appropriate tourism development in connection with the adopted emerging local plan. The application is therefore considered acceptable and recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Marcus, please.
So, Lisa, this plan is on land where council have already accepted the proposal to build properties. Yeah, so they could go back to those old plans and build.
That's correct. There's a pair of semi-detached granite cottages in an L shape.
Okay. And this is these 5 micro-lodges, they're called. This is in place of that. Okay, personally, I can't see any issues. The issues I've got with this application is the flow of applications, basically, which is currently up to a site owner to change their mind and change what they want to do. It does seem to be dragging on a little bit, but I would welcome this new development. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. As this replaces previous council agreement to planning in that spot, there doesn't seem any valid planning reasons for refusing this application, in my view. Although I do agree that they will only be available and suitable for a very limited number of guests because of the accessibility issues around some of the units and the bed space. I would just like to check, having previously asked for a condition on a previous application, that these units remain an integral part of the hotel building and in effect cannot be sold separately. And I'm just aware, is there anything we can do about timeshare? Should we have a view on that, or is that not within the planning? My main point is that they shouldn't be able to be sold separately to the hotel. It becomes part of a commercial enterprise. Thank you.
I think the condition that we've previously used is on this application about limiting the use and tying it to be part of the hotel. I don't have a view. I don't think it's particularly relevant if they're timeshares or not. I don't think it would be to refuse it.
Understood. I just wondered if we need to firm up within the recommendation the fact that they cannot be sold separately. Perhaps the monitoring officer would like to give us some advice. Sorry, Chair, I shouldn't intrude.
Stephen, do you wish to say something on this matter? It's an interesting point, isn't it, as to whether or not they should be capable of selling away from the main site. At the moment, they are, as I understand it, going to be self-contained, are they not? Because they will have catering facilities in them and they will have the usual living facilities within them. So technically, I suppose that wouldn't be a particular problem. So the issue then for Lisa to advise on is whether or not there will be any material planning harm if they were sold separately, capable of separate occupation, bearing in mind the size and the location of them. And at first sight, I cannot see any material planning harm being caused by that. So if Councillor Mrs. Grottick would like to say what her fears are, we might be able to just home in on that one.
Can I just butt in before you do that, Fred? Can I just butt in?
Can I just have Councillor Marcus then a moment, please?
Sorry. On condition C6, it says that the micro-lodges shall be retained in the freehold ownership of the hotel and should not be occupied for any person for more than 42 days. So I think that covers, this issue has come up before, so I think that covers what Councillor Grottick is worried about. So,
well, that's the occupancy condition, not the ownership condition.
It shall be retained in the freehold ownership of the hotel.
Yeah, but they can. I think that means that it could be leased off.
Yep.
And that's my only point, which is why I wanted to kind of just explore why, what material harm would be caused if it wasn't a separate leasehold ownership or something. Okay. I think it's unlikely, in fairness.
Yes, just for clarification, thank you. My concern is that I think that there is firstly possible, it's a very tight unit, and I can only see it being sold as a second home. My concern is that it should remain part of a viable island business and contribute to the economic viability of the island and not be sold off separately. I also have concerns about the design and the level of insulation and the thought given to a permanent structure as opposed to something that is just for holiday use. So I just wondered, I agree with the lead member for planning, it's within the report. I wondered if it needed to be drawn out of the report and added to the recommendation, just for clarity. I'm happy to take advice on that, obviously.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, it was just to say that these are very small. These are we wouldn't, so they would have to apply to lift that condition or vary that condition. These are intentionally small. They're not got the standard of accommodation. So if they were to be seeking to lift that condition, so the short let nature of them, they would have to then comply with the space standards, and they would have to be much bigger if they wanted, and they would have to have outdoor space and space for waste recycling. They would have to be independently accessible. Now, they are independent. They're self-contained units, but they are very small, not suitable, in my view, and certainly wouldn't meet the minimum space standards for permanent occupation, even for one person.
So, Chairman, if what I've understood it to be the question, then condition C6 could be amended so that the premises shall be used for the purpose of holiday accommodation only in connection with regards to hotel for no other purpose, including any other purpose in Class C3 of the order, and go on to say that micro lodges hereby approved shall be retained in the freehold ownership of the hotel and shall continue to be managed as part of the hotel and shall not be occupied by any persons, etc. So that would achieve what the ownership is, and it would tie in with the reason as well, which says that the reason that proposed micro lodges form part of the wider hotel complex. So that would be for the that would confirm the intention and would certainly require some an application for relaxation of the condition if there was going to be a change in the management or ownership of it.
Are you comfortable with that, Lisa?
Yeah, so I would just add in a recommendation that we amend condition C6 then.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'll just take Councillor Smith a moment before we deal with that. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I think the less camera approved on the site is regrettable. Also, just comment, I think in the application, the lack of detail on sustainable design measures is a bit disappointing. However, I am happy with condition C11, so just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, anybody else wishing to come in, please? No, so could I please have a proposer? Did you propose this, Councillor Marcus?
No, but I will with the amended recommendations.
Thank you. And a seconder for that, please? Councillor Mumford, thank you. Is there any councillor against? No? Then it's passed. Thank you very much indeed. So the next item on our agenda is item 12, last planning application, which is P1003 of the store. In your hands again, Lisa, please.
And Councillor Watt declared an interest. Could he confirm whether he's leaving the meeting or whether he's remaining?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I can remain, but I won't take any part in the discussion or vote.
So you don't have so you have a non-registrable interest, a non-financial interest?
That's correct.
Thank you. Right, thank you.
So, Lisa, thank you.
Thank you. So this application is brought to full council following members' consideration of an application in 2019, which included elements which are now under consideration again. This application seeks to reintroduce a customer car park onto Telegraph Road, which was previously amended out of the 2019 scheme, following a recommendation to refuse that one. Under the previous application, the proposed customer car park of the store was amended to be retained within the industrial estate, and the Telegraph Road side was amended to be retained for deliveries. That application was therefore approved. The application proposes to reverse these car parking delivery arrangements and site the customer car park on the Telegraph Road side of the building. The car park, which will include provision of 6 car parking bays, one of which would be an accessible car parking space, cycle parking, as well as the retention of the segregated pedestrian access. In order to achieve this and improve the visibility for vehicles onto Telegraph Road, the proposal seeks to centralise the point of access to the site. You will note from the report that the Telegraph Road is subject to 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. You will also note that it's been demonstrated that vehicles generally travel at speeds of 30 miles an hour. The visibility sightlines for any new junction arrangement should enable cars, when exiting, to see sufficiently without pulling into the highway and into the path of oncoming vehicles. The sightlines and visibility displays have been included in this planning application, but remain in third-party ownership. It is therefore not considered enforceable to impose a planning condition to retain the maximum possible visibility, so the maintenance of hedges in perpetuity. The advice of the Highway Authority is therefore that the proposed customer access is substandard and will require vehicles to edge out into the road in order to see sufficiently to pull out onto Telegraph Road. In any event, it's been identified that even with the current sightlines maintained, vehicles still have to edge out into the road to see sufficiently any oncoming traffic. Notwithstanding the visibility issues, the highway response also identifies that the configuration of the car park would likely see vehicles waiting on Telegraph Road, particularly if there is a vehicle waiting to exit, leading to an increase in vehicles parking on Telegraph Road. Officers have balanced the benefits in this case of seeking to ease congestion within the industrial estate, as well as the general improvements to maximum visibility by repositioning the access. but have reflected on the concerns of the Highway Authority, supported by a Highway Impact Report that was done for the 2019 application. In addition, planning history presents a consistent concern with an increase in use of this access. Permission in 2014 did permit the Telegraph Road entrance to the site, but only on a restricted and limited basis, and Condition 6 of the 2014 permission sought to ensure that this was only to be used by commercial vehicles to offload or load materials to and from the site, and not other vehicles, including customers using the premises. And it's for these the reasons set out in the report in relation to highway safety that the application is unfortunately recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm conflicted, I think, on this application. Basically, want to support a business that provides much-needed resilience to the islands. The applicant has obviously invested heavily in the business and is trying to solve an issue which is just not also his own issue, but an issue for other residents of the industrial estate as well. And it brings us on to a wider point, like Councillor Williams mentioned about traffic in the previous application for Enna Close, for the Enna building site. It's kind of, I would urge future councils to take a lead in trying to do something about traffic management on the islands. I think if this application was on the mainland, we would be asking the applicant for contributions for a roundabout to help manage the traffic flow. But we're not, and I understand, Lisa, that we don't have any 106 arrangements like that on the islands. So, in view of that, I would have to agree with the officers that the applicant can't manage the visibility displays himself, and therefore we would have to refuse the application.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
Yes, this is an extremely difficult one. We have two experts. The expert for the highways that the council employs recommended refusal. The expert for the store, John Pearson, who's a consultant in transport and highways, I'd just like to read a little bit out from his report. It is considered that the proposed new vehicle access onto Telegraph Road is safe and fit for purpose in a semi-rural setting, providing a safer access than the existing substandard access. It's really, which one do you believe? And also, there is becoming a big problem the other side of the road with parking. I've had lots of people come to me and say, when are they going to be allowed to park in the car park? Because they're parking the other side of the road because they can't get into the industrial estate because there's so many lorries parked all over the place. I think this is a very difficult one, and I appreciate what Councillor Marcus has just said about the view. I mean, it's okay at the moment, but I can assume if somebody was to build, then that would block the site. I'd be interested to hear what other councillors have to say about this, but I'd also like to ask the monitoring officer, if this was approved and there was an accident, would the council be liable for going against the recommendation of the planning officer?
Stephen, would you like to come in on that, please?
Yes, certainly, Chairman. The situation is not always clear. There has been conflicting advice on this in the past. My own view is that you have consulted with independent highway people and you have a view from them that the visibility display that's needed is not satisfied by this application. You have a transportation advisory note which was commissioned by the applicant, and that note takes a different view as to the size of the visibility display that is needed. So, but then on the one hand you could say, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? But on the other hand, you know, respecting their professionalism, they may legitimately have a different view. If you do grant planning permission, having considered this for the best of reasons, and there is an accident, then obviously somebody would try to hold the local authority responsible. I can't say that it's inconceivable that would win, but I think it unlikely, because the cause of the accident would be somebody being careless or not paying due attention in leaving the site. Your issue really is, should you ignore the professional advice that you have sought from your own advisor? And I have to say, I think that is very, very hard to justify, because that is why you have got your own advice and not relying on the applicant providing their highway advice. So if you do ignore your own advice, I think you need very, very, very good reasons for doing that, and I cannot recommend that.
It just seems that if we'd actually gone to John Pearson for our advice, the things would have been reversed.
Who knows? Who knows? I think that's speculation. But you have, Lisa has sought independent highways advice, and she's got it, and that is what she's advising you on. And I think that, on any objective criteria, why would you ignore the advice from your own professional officers? Because this is more of an objective criteria of what national standards are. And the applicant has said, well, you shouldn't really adopt those high standards, you should adopt a lower standard. But that is what Lisa is advising you. I hope that helps. Might not be the answer you want, but I'm hoping it kind of sets out the issues for you. Thank you, Chairman.
I would be interested to hear anybody else's opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, this is a much-needed facility, I agree, and well done to the applicant for the business that he's set up. He has, however, got five parking spaces on the industrial side site, so it is possible for people to park there if they access from the industrial estate. I find that I would have to support refusal because, as the monitoring officer has said, we took advice and we were given it, and then the planning officer reflects that advice in the report, and I can find no reason not to support the planning officer and the advice that we commissioned ourselves. So I think, as the previous Chief Exec Mark Bowden said, we do place ourselves in a vulnerable position if we don't go with the advice that we commissioned. However, I would say I'd like to assure the applicant that in refusing, I would also like to suggest that if we're still on the council following the election, we commit to having a really good look at the industrial estate and seeing if we can't manage things better for all who work down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roger, please.
Yeah, I'd like to also echo Councillor Grottick's thoughts just then. Fully applaud the applicant for the business that's been created there, and it's much needed for both the local community and the tourist community. Even at this time of the year, when there's very little going on at the moment, obviously, the road to the left-hand side of the applicant's proposed exit, has always got parking on it. Throw into the mix when we are more normal and the sailing school is operating, the restaurant is operating, gig club is operating. That area is constantly a single-file traffic road with its own dangers without this proposed exit from the car park. So on that practical local road-using grounds, I would typically support the recommendation, but echo Councillor Gossip that maybe other solutions need sought. There are 5 car parking spaces, as Councillor Gossip pointed out, at the rear of the building, which ultimately is 5 more than the co-op has itself. So it's a difficult one, as Councillor Mumford says, but on the balance of it, I don't think we can go against the professional recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roger. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think part of what Councillor Roger just said around congestion around the site, that should be alleviated through providing some parking for the store. So in many senses, I find this an incredibly difficult application, and a lot of me says that the common sense option is to provide some parking because it's needed, and we're trying to relieve parking, vehicle movement through the industrial estate. I think the applicant's between a bit of a rock and a hard place with this one. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes it to appeal if we refuse it. I don't feel I can propose approval, but I'm not very happy about refusal either. Extremely difficult application. I have a lot of sympathy for the applicant here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Yeah, echoing what others have said, really, we're all desperate to pass this, but basically we can't because of the road safety implications. So I would have to support the recommendation. Another thing about that particular area, across the road, the pavement is in a shocking condition. It's extremely difficult for people to push along with pushchairs, particularly with as you get into May and June when the plants are overgrown. So there's an additional issue there. There are quite a lot of times pedestrians in the road because the pavement's very narrow. It's a very shoddy condition, and you've got certain times of the summer you've got brambles coming out in it. So I couldn't actually, with my hand on my heart, pass this application much as I wanted.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
I totally agree with almost every other comment that's been made in the discussion this morning. But I'm conscious we flagged up the area where cars are parked on the main road. We flagged it up as a danger, and it would be perhaps remiss not to do anything about it if it's a danger we consider. Perhaps we need to consider outside this meeting either talking to our highways team or the police to put a row of bollards or something there to prevent the cars which are parked there. Otherwise, it just seems we're identifying a problem and not doing anything about it.
Thank you very much. Could I please? We have a recommend. Sorry, Councillor Mumford.
I was going to propose a recommendation.
Thank you.
Robert, could I come in, please?
Yes, certainly. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're unfortunately being a little bit hypocritical and having some muddled thinking over the regulations. I quite understand the fact that we should take advice from the highways and take professional advice when we seek it. But at Old Town, we're using arguments to open up a space, and here we're using arguments against it, and there seems to be a conflict as far as I can see. I mean, going on from this, I think it's ridiculous that we still have a 60-mile-an-hour limit. I mean, this permits us bringing in vehicles that can do 60 miles an hour without any trouble at all. And remember that the electric vehicles accelerate faster and are quieter. And I think you could argue they bring in a greater hazard than the existing vehicles that we do have at present. The corner, which I come very frequently at Woodlow Terrace corner, actually slows traffic down. And the same argument applies to Old Town. You can't physically drive through Old Town at 60 miles an hour, and if you did, you would be driving dangerously and you would be liable. And the fact that there's no limit doesn't mean that you can drive in a dangerous manner. Likewise, parking by the gig club and on the other side actually could prevent accidents, and it's because it slows down the traffic. You can actually go past that entrance faster if you're going Telegraph Way than if you're going into town, because you come down the hill from the school and you have to slow down when the people are parked there on the left. But so that by the time you get to this proposed entrance, you would actually be going slower anyway. There are places on the mainland where they encourage small villages where they have traffic problems, and I frequently go to one village where there is a problem because it's a cut through and a rack run in the morning at mornings and evenings when the businesses are opening up. They actually encourage you to park down the village so that what is a 30-mile-an-hour limit becomes impossible because it's a single carriageway road, so that actually restricts the traffic and people don't go that way. And if they do, you have to go slow and you have to stop, just as you have to actually physically stop at Old Town to go through the chicane at Old Town. So I think some of the arguments we're using are actually conflicting. And yes, it's a very big, difficult problem that we have here because this keeps coming up, and I can see the argument. But it's an established fact of highways that if you have a 30-mile-an-hour limit and you have an accident at 30 miles an hour, the statistics of serious injury suddenly drop very. What I'm saying is there's a very logical reason why we stick to a 30-mile-an-hour limit, because the actual dangers are, the actual chance of a serious injury below 30 miles an hour is much, much lower than any speed above 30 miles an hour. So I think that really we should be looking, and I know it needs legislation, and I know it's a difficult one, but I think the time has come which we really should be thinking about proposing some restriction on traffic on these islands. It's one of the things that keeps coming up with visitors. They say the traffic's going too fast. And the way I see it is that it's going fast, not by mainland standards. It's going fast because we are mixing pedestrian ways. We have A roads without even a verge, let alone a pavement. And to drive along there above 30 miles an hour, it could be regarded as driving dangerously. So, yes, I'm very conflicted on this application, and I can see both sides, but I obviously take the monitoring officer's warning that we could be in serious trouble if we go against our own professional advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Councillor Marcus, did you have your hand up again, or?
No, that was it. But just a proposed recommendation. I'd like everyone else conflicted, and would like to see, again, urge future councils to try and grasp this problem that we've got with highways. It's not just here, it's parking in town, parking everywhere. So that's it from me, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please, for the proposal that is to refuse this application?
Is Councillor Roger a legacy hand, Chairman?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder, please, for the recommendation?
I'll second it.
Councillor Grottick, thank you. Is there any councillor against the recommendation, please? Councillor Mumford? Anybody else?
Yes, I'm against it.
Anybody else, please?
Yeah, Councillor Smith.
No, I've got you, Councillor Smith.
Stephen Davis is here.
Is now exiting.
Right. Councillor Davis, have you left the meeting, or are you against this recommendation?
Should we take a roll call, Chairman, just for the avoidance of doubt?
Okay, thank you. Would you like to conduct that then, please?
Certainly, Chairman. Councillor Dean.
Reluctantly for refusal.
For refusal, okay, thank you. Councillor Davis. The motion is to refuse. So, Councillor Davis, no.
I think that was him. I think he phoned off, unfortunately.
That's fine. Okay, so Councillor Chairman?
For, reluctantly as well.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. For. Thank you, Councillor Roger.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Councillor Roger.
Is now exiting.
Who has exited?
Councillor Roger.
Okay, okay. Councillor Watt said he was taking no part. Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Grottick.
Reluctantly agree the motion.
Thank you. Is Councillor Guy with us? No. Councillor Mrs. Mumford.
Again.
Thank you. Councillor Nellams.
For.
And Councillor Sims.
For.
Thank you. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for refusals and 2.
Yes, Councillor Roger.
Is now joining.
Okay. So that's the vote as I have recorded it, Chairman.
So this application is refused. Thank you. I would like to just comment from the chair that there's been a lot of consternation around this application with councillors, as you have heard today, and this has been discussed with the Chief Executive, and it is appreciated that we need to try and resolve the parking issues in the industrial estate in order to help businesses in that location. And whilst we are unable to go against, obviously, the highway safety advice, as you've just seen on the vote, we will focus on improving this as far as possible and as soon as possible. So I'm sure that there will be good look by the new council at traffic, not just in the state, but
is now joining.
On the islands generally. Thank you. So we move on to on item number 13 of our agenda, which is the internal capacity review, the report of the Chief Executive, Paul Masters. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to confirm, I've asked Aisling if she would kindly withdraw from the meeting at this point. And as you know, Nicola Simpson's also on leave and not on the meeting today. So just give Aisling a moment to leave, and then I'll text her when the report is concluded, Chairman. Okay. So members will recall that you asked me at the commencement of working with you that I did an internal review of the council structure, bearing in mind we had a vacancy at the senior manager level when Craig left the authority, which was over a year ago. I've also taken the opportunity in doing this review to consult widely with the staff, and on numerous occasions have consulted with members informally as I come to presenting this report to you. The majority of the changes for the rest of the council are delegated to myself as head of paid service, but in a nutshell, this report is designed to strengthen the accountability of managers and to add capacity to the authority in two particular areas that I brought to your attention in informal meetings, Chairman, and those were particularly around our property and asset estate in terms of adding some professional capacity in that area, and to strengthen our approaches to the environment and the issues that are facing us in the future. And that has been done as well. All the way through, though, I've done all I could to ensure that the changes remain cost neutral to the authority. And today's paper before you therefore recommends that we reduce the senior managers from 3 to 2 and designate them as strategic directors broadly for place and broadly for people. This approach is very much in line with other councils across the country, and as well as consulting widely internally, both with staff and with yourselves, I've also taken the opportunity to consult with the LGA and South West councils to ensure that the proposals are robust. Obviously, one of the key issues is the salary range that I'm recommending to you. This salary range has been subject to consultation with external bodies and is in effect formalising the range of the temporary arrangements that you put in place when Craig left. So they're in line with those original salary increases that you had before. Obviously, this reduced, by taking one post out at a senior level, this reduces the senior manager overall budget considerably, and then allows me to build capacity at the middle manager layer, particularly around property, as I've said. So I'm recommending this to you today, Chairman and Council, as a sensible and robust arrangement for the authority. And at this point, I'd also like to put on record my thanks to both those senior managers who have taken on those additional responsibilities for over a year now, and to you all, councillors, for your detailed input to getting to this position. So that's my recommendation to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support this. I think if 5 years ago, this would have been nonsense. We just couldn't have possibly done it. We were right in the middle of sorting out Morwell. The airport was in special measures, and we desperately needed a senior manager for infrastructure. But most of those problems are resolved, i.e., we're no longer in intensive care on those things. And then when you're in intensive care, you need a consultant available at all times. So I completely support that. I think it's the sensible way forward. And as Paul said, it enables perhaps more specialists at a more junior level. So I would very happy to propose both recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. I agree with our Chief Executive. I welcome the changes. I do disagree somewhat with Councillor Sims. I think if we cast our mind back nearly 10 years ago, a very similar model was on the table when we had an interim Chief Exec come in to devise a new structure, and for various reasons it didn't happen. So I think we're probably now where we would have been 8 years ago. But my question to the Chief Exec was, does this, now the top tier is done, is there any intention of having a wider look at the lower tier of the organisation?
Thank you, Councillor. If you recall, in terms of some of the informal meetings, I'm quite happy to send it to you again. There were some minor changes in the middle tier of the organisation. Some of the role profiles have been tightened up and amended, and there is, as I said, a completely new position in terms of assets and property, which is currently out for advert at the moment. So those minor changes have already been carried out through the rest of the organisation, ready to come into being on the 1st of April, Council.
Doesn't make any difference, actually, because we're
Thank you.
back of the phone.
We have a councillor who's not on mute, please. Could you please all make sure you are muted? Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you wish to come back on that? Or?
I may not make myself clear, but are you looking at, now this is sort of hopefully being put to bed, are you looking, I know there's a review into operational services across that particular board, but I'm thinking about all the other employees who sit outside this tier. Is there likely to be any change to their roles and responsibilities over the coming year in terms of a review?
There are no further reviews planned, Councillor, other than the ones I've already mentioned to you. So perhaps I'll recirculate those changes that have currently been put in place for the 1st of April, but there's no further changes post the 1st of April other than the operational service review that we're in the middle of at the moment. So I've got no further plans for any further changes, Councillor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thanks. I would support this simplification of the organisation. Just a couple of really nitty points in the role profiles. Emergency planning is kind of different in both roles. I understand one of the roles has responsibility, but the role profile for the people and communities post also mentions that. So could we just clarify that? And also about having in the section which is, I think, working conditions and demands, the people and community one mentions about having a life and a personal life, whereas the other role doesn't. So I don't know whether that's we need to ensure that all of our staff have a personal life. So could we just clarify that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Well spotted, yes. I mean, it should either be in both or in neither, because actually it's also covered in the Code of Conduct for the authority as well. So I will tighten that up, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. In terms of the emergency management point, I understand your point, but it does need to be in both. I think the point, perhaps not very clear, and we will clarify, is the staff, in effect, who are trained in emergency management sit under Nicola, whereas both strategic directors will be responsible for taking the lead for emergency management as required. So both of them need to take that lead role, but the actual staff who underpin it and support it are under Nicola's direct line management.
Cool. So yes, just some clarification around that. That would be great.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, largely supportive of this. Just two questions. Firstly, are the two roles equal in terms of workload? Secondly, how does this change affect the pay multiple between the highest and the lowest paid in the organisation? Thank you.
In terms of the first question, the roles, in my view, are completely equal, and I've gone through great detail with all of those individuals to make sure that I do think that they are equitable and the same. I know in terms of direct reports, it might look like the one's heavier than the other, but you'll understand the regulatory requirements of some areas, particularly under social care, can be quite heavy, and particularly in terms of the legal onus on some of those services. So I'm convinced that they are equal in terms of their role. In terms of the multiplier, I haven't actually worked that one out, but I will do. But I would expect that there isn't a considerable difference. It may well be slightly worse than it was before, but it would be marginal, Councillor. But I will undertake to do that some and pass it round to all councillors.
Councillor Roger.
Is now joining.
Thank you. Can you just remind me, please, have I got a proposer for the recommendations in this report, please?
Yeah, I propose. I'll happily propose.
Thank you. The Sims seconded Councillor Smith. Is there any councillor against these recommendations, please? No, then they're passed. Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for that. We now move on to item 14 on our agenda, which is the Council Tax Hardship Fund in the hands of our 151 officer, Russell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report today in front of members came from when we set the budget a month ago. As part of setting the budget, we allocated a sum of £10,000 to set up a scheme for local council tax hardship. We said we'd bring back the details of that scheme at today's meeting, which is the report we now have in front of you. Having had consultations with the Cornwall Council's Head of Assessments, Billing and Collections, who runs the council tax service for Cornwall and Yards, the City Council, his view and looking at it in terms of being fair, equitable and simple to administer is to continue using the same scheme that the government put in place as part of the COVID emergency, that we give £150 or up to £150 discount for people who are on local council tax support and are of working age. The feeling is that delivers what we're after, which is giving additional support to those who are in most need of it. There are other schemes that you could bring in which are more subjective and would require people to submit detailed applications setting out why they think they may need support. I think, bearing in mind that we are only administering £10,000, we've got to be careful that we don't end up spending more administering the amount that we're distributing. So the recommendation today is to continue on the same lines that we had in place for the current year, albeit that was central government funded.
Thank you very much. Do we have Councillor Williams, please?
Yeah, just a really minor question. How do we define a working age? It's my understanding there isn't necessarily a de facto retirement age, so what does that mean?
There is a retirement age. I haven't got the exact details here, but there is a difference in the way that council tax operates. The council tax support scheme already has this built into it as a condition, and they will follow those same conditions for awarding this money.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that all second if somebody's already proposed. I mean, I think this is £10,000 doesn't look like an awful lot, but it's in a way it's quite generous in a way because I mean it doesn't it's to cover people for the additional 3%, the adult social care reset. Now, well, that's about £45,000. So the £10,000 is well over 20%, it's 22% of that figure. So it should hopefully cover everything that's required.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, fundamentally, I think this is a really good thing. Very supportive of this, as you know, many people facing challenging financial situations. Just sort of following on from Councillor Williams's point, what's the definition of council tax support? Because on our website, it's not really defined as such, other than people on low or no incomes. I wasn't quite clear on the exact definition of that.
Yes, I can come back on that one, Councillor. The council tax support scheme, the Council of the Isles of Scilly is still operating the old central government de facto scheme, which was replaced in 2011-12, where the responsibility transfers from central government to local authorities, and most local authorities set up their own scheme and changed some of the rules and regulations. The Council of the Isles of Scilly has maintained the old central government scheme, and it clearly sets out that people who trigger the council tax support, it's to do with the level and the type of benefits that they are eligible for. So it's clearly set out in the rules. What I have discussed with the head of assessments in Cornwall as part of having discussions with this is that actually it's more than time for us to bring back the existing council tax support scheme for you to review and re-approve. It is, I believe when it was first, the ability to bring a local scheme was first brought in place by central government about, let's say, 2012. There was a view that the Council of the Isles of Scilly would review it and bring in its own scheme. And if you go back through 2012 to 2016, I think there was a period where every year it said, we'll do it next year. I think now that we are so far from that change in central government, it would be timely to bring back the scheme for you to approve, because there are quite a few discretions in there as well that it's probably worth yourselves revisiting, which can provide additional support over and above this hardship. And we do need to make sure that those are up to date and you are content that they are appropriate.
Thank you, Russell. And perhaps, Chairman, it would be appropriate to recommend that as a second recommendation, to bring the council tax support scheme back to members for consideration in due course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell.
Councillor Smith, are you seconding that, both recommendations in that case?
Yes, I will. Yes. Yeah. So, second recommendation to bring the council tax support scheme back to members within, should we say, 6 months, Russell? Is that okay?
Yes, I anticipate bringing it back in the summer once we're the other side of the elections.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Chairman.
So I have a proposer and a seconder for what will now be two recommendations, the one before you and the fact that there will be a review of this brought forward in the next 6 months. So is there any councillor against these recommendations, please? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much indeed, Russell. And item 15 on our agenda, the third quarter financial performance report, is also in your hands. Please, Russell. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll quickly take you through the report and pick out the key points of interest for you. First of all, just to say, it is the report to the end of December, the Q3 report, a little bit late coming to you, but because of the move in the January meeting coming forward, it wasn't achievable to bring that report in time to the January meeting. And it felt that as we had the large budget setting report on February, bringing the Q3 report in the same meeting could cause confusion. and it is extremely hard to ensure that the two are aligned when you're on the same agenda, because they overtake each other if you're not careful. So that is the reason why I was slightly late this quarter. Moving through, you will see that our position, as we've already reported in that budget report, that now at Q3 we are forecasting that we will be underspent by about just over £300,000 for the year. There are a number of reasons for that. One is that we have received significant support on the COVID activity from central government that has helped negate the impact of COVID on the council. Activity has been light. Normal activity has been light during that period, as most of the resources within the council, being such a small council, have been focused on dealing with the COVID activity, which, as I said, has been funded certainly in part by central government. So that means that some of our normal activity has not happened and has caused additional savings. In addition to that, we have had savings in the adult care service, mainly due to the mix of people within the Park House residential home, in the fact that we have I think it is all 100% of the current service users in there are people that are self-funding. So that is all leading to a healthy position of an underspend of, say, £300,000 for the year. In addition to that, the savings on that Park House are greater than that, but as I say, that is because of a rather odd situation where everyone is self-funding. It could easily tilt the other way. Our budget is set on the basis of a mix of self-funding and public-funded positions within Park House. Therefore, I think the proposal is that we put some of the Park House savings away into an equalisation reserve to help smooth when perhaps the numbers drop the other way, where there is a larger proportion of non-self-funders in the home. So that is part of the recommendations in the report. As we went through in the budget setting report, using that 300,000, we will transfer that to the general fund reserve if that is still there at the end of the year, and I anticipate it will be. And we used 245,000 of that in the first instance to smooth the council tax and business rate correction funds over the next 3 years. Both of those correction funds, which I'll get onto in a minute, will have losses due to COVID. That could have an impact on future year budgets. By using this money to smooth that, which you approved in the February budget report, means that that does not have an impact on service delivery for the next 3 years. So it's a healthy position we're in. As I say, we need to make sure that is used to ensure that we have a healthy position over the next 3 years. We have set out, and I don't want to go through them, the grants we have received to date from the government, significant support from the government. And I think if you get to page 323, you can see in the graph in 2.6 that at the beginning of the year in quarter one, when COVID first hit, the alarm bells rang. We could have been sitting there looking at a significant overspend, because we would have had reduced income streams, we had all the additional costs of dealing with COVID. At that point, we were unsure of what level of support central government would give, although initial support had been allocated. It was far from being sufficient to deal with the issue. But as the year has panned out, central government support has increased, and as I said, has been sufficient to meet the additional costs of COVID to the council. And you can see that moves forward in the chart showing the forecast variations. Moving on, the capital programme on page 324, the percentage spent 41%. There is significant spend in the last quarter, and that's consistent not only with our council but many councils up and down the land, and probably further impacted by COVID this year. I still think that it's probably an ambitious target to hit the latest approved estimate of 3.3, but we're working on improving the forecasting for future years. The major scheme there, the Go EV, members, I'm aware, get regular updates from the team and should be aware of progress. Progress, as I've reported previously, has been slow, but we now are seeing a speeding up of that scheme. Spending is starting to come through at a much higher rate. I'm seeing that in the payment runs as well. We're seeing it in the accounts, and you'll have seen it with the activity on the island in terms of the installation of the canopies and the infrastructure works to support that, and additional vehicles are in the process of being purchased. Voucher scheme is similar in the fact that it's just starting to pick up now. Whether we hit the full target, I think it is still open to question, but speed is picking up now, and I think we'll see spend pick up in the last quarter of the year and into next year. The forecast savings, I won't dwell on that. They haven't changed from the last report and how we dealt with them in the budget setting. Council tax performance, probably worth just dwelling on that quickly, is that it is interesting how close performance is. We probably thought this would take a significant hit earlier in the year with collection rates maybe down, well down from the 98.5 target, down low 90%. It hasn't hit that. We were likely to get up to somewhere around the 97, 98%. Still down, which will create a loss in the collection fund, which we have factored into the financial plans for the next 3 years. And that is why we're using some of that underspend this year to smooth that. But it is interesting that the collection rate hasn't been hit as much as possible, although some of that is that the people in the most hardships have attracted additional council tax support, which has also had an impact on the overall collection fund. That more council tax support and the hardship fund have helped mitigate it for those who are being the worst hit in our community. Business rates collection, again, similarly, will take a hit, but the sums are much, much lower due to the additional support the central government has now put in. Our collectible business rates is significantly lower due to the increase in the reliefs and the benefits that central government are now funding and were given to all the businesses for the year. The water rates is one that I think I need to just draw to your attention. We had quite a significant sum outstanding on the transfer of the water service to South West Water. Obviously, this has been impacted by COVID in our ability to do the collection of those outstanding sums. It's not just our decision not to collect. The government put out edicts that we could not put full collection processes in place, etc., and that we should take a very, very soft approach to any debt collecting. The courts weren't open for a long period for bringing small claims, etc., to help debt collecting. The downside of that is that we've still got a significant sum outstanding, although some money has been collected during the year. There's still a sum of some 79,000 outstanding. We will try and collect that, but I think I need to draw your attention to the fact that as this is now almost a year older, by the time we do start collecting, as you will probably all understand, the older a debt is, the harder it is usually to collect. And I anticipate that we will struggle to collect the full amount. We have put a provision in, and there was a provision in last year's accounts, but I think we may have to increase that provision towards the end of this financial year to reflect that we will probably not collect as much as anticipated. Housing rent collection is actually better than it has been for a number of years. I think that's credit to the service who are now right on top of the collection of the rent, and things are going really well there. And the sundry deposition is far better than it has been for a number of years as well. Okay, a little bit of that is down to a lower level of activity, less invoices raised, but it's still a lot better position. We are starting to make inroads into there. What we have to do is bring your attention to that there is a very old debt that is sitting on the council's books relating to British International Helicopters. We have now received, or we did receive during the last 12 months and during the COVID process times, the final letters from the courts and the administrators that the company has now been formally wound up, and there is no hope of any further distributions being made. Therefore, the sums that we're holding now have to be written off. They are fully provided for in our bad debt provision, so shouldn't hit the bottom line in terms of usable resources. But we do and have got a recommendation to write those debts off. Payment of invoices, performance now has really settled down, and you can see we're getting really good performance going forward. We're paying our suppliers on time and within the targets we set. We have just touched on the waste fees and charges. There was a slight error when we set the fees and charges in February. VAT was incorrectly added to some of the waste and the fees and charges for the waste service, and one of the services had the wrong sum. That has now been corrected and the right rates have been published, but we just wanted to bring your attention to it in this report, and that there is a recommendation to note the action we have taken. We didn't feel that it was a best use of time and effort to bring the full report back again, just for the small correction. The fees and charges themselves were correct in terms of the income that comes into the council, so there's no financial implications. So we just included it in this report for you to note that we have amended the fees and charges as you saw, but to just correct them to the VAT element. And the closure of accounts, which we always bring as part of the closure of accounts, our process is now run fairly quickly through April and the early part of May, and during that process we will enact a number of transfers to and from reserves. Transfers to and from reserves are formally need formal approval from members, but obviously we now have a process, a statutory process that means the accounts get closed much quicker. Therefore, we will make those transfers to and from reserves, and I'm asking you to delegate that approval to me. I will bring back what we have done in the June report, and you can make any amendments you want. It won't change the position as at the 31st of March, but any of those transfers to reserves, if you feel that the action I have taken you don't agree with, we can correct in the new year, but we won't be correcting the old year because of the timing. That's the report. I'm open to any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for a very comprehensive report as usual. Councillor Grottek, please.
Thank you, Chair. No questions, just a couple of comments, please, Russell. I think the Park House Equalisation Fund is a very sensible way forward, because obviously the service is demand-led and people's financial circumstances we have no way of telling, so I think that's really sensible. I'd just like to also welcome recent government plans to work on the second home issue, whereby second homeowners have been claiming small business rate relief and registering some homes that are actually not viable businesses as self-catering businesses. And I think this should actually help improve our council tax rates in the future, which will be very welcome, because second homeowners, it is suggested, will now have to prove that they actually do run a viable letting business before they can register for non-domestic rates. So I welcome that. So thank you again, Russell. I'm happy to propose the recommendations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to come in, please? No. Could I have a seconder then, please, for the recommendations? The month. Thank you. Is there any councillor against these recommendations, please? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much indeed, Russell, for your help. Item 16 on the agenda is our risk and Q3 non-financial performance report, which is in the hands of Bob Dawson, our Officer for Policy and Scrutiny. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. I take the report as read, but I would just like to add a few words by way of introduction. On the risk side, as the report states, the operational leadership team is now recording those potential areas of risk escalation that are additional to the corporate risk register, which is presented at Appendix A to the report. Also, the corporate risk management approach is continually evolving. Hence, we see a merging of two risks which have links to business continuity from the previous report, and also recognition that consideration is to be given to staff well-being and the impacts under the pandemic and within the COVID-19 risk as we move through the recovery process. The direction of travel overall is relatively unchanged, and in part this kind of reflects what can be quite lengthy timescales for some of these risks in order to implement those further actions that will enable the Council to make progress towards achieving a target risk. And the new Council administration will be presented with a revised risk management policy, and member induction following the elections will cover both risk and performance. And with regard to performance, members will note that two of the balanced scorecard measures at Appendix B in this report are also reflected in all the service plans presented in the following item that relates to mandatory training and performance development plans for staff. And others of those balanced scorecard measures are referred to by individual services among a wider number of progress and performance measures listed in those many appendices to the following report. It's also the intention that the Scrutiny Committee will consider the annual 2020-21 performance outturn in June meeting under the new administration, in order that hopefully there will be time for recommendations from the committee in relation to that annual summary can then be presented to full council. These are likely to have regard to current measures and targets as well as other progress and performance measures, and that those may result in changes to the scorecard. So thank you, Chairman. Again, that concludes my introduction. I'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much, Bob, for that. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Williams, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question about Park House and the issue which seemed to arise earlier in the year. It's clearly good that occupancy levels are high, but it obviously threatens the sort of whole debate we had 4 or 5 years ago about being able to care for people on Scilly if we can't meet the demand which is growing. So I just wondered whether that was likely a one-off.
Is now exiting.
Or something we just need to be more mindful of going forward.
I think it's still, unless Ashling's still on the call, it's still kept under review. It was covered at the following operational leadership team meeting, and it was felt that the capacity, the immediate risk and capacity had been much reduced. But I would defer to Ashling or the Chief Exec on that point.
Yeah, I think Ashling is still with us. Would you like to come in, Ashling?
Bob's done a very good job there. Yeah, he's absolutely right. So it's kept under weekly review, and we are able to manage it. Obviously, we work very closely with partners in the voluntary sector and health, so that we are aware of what's coming up. So dynamic review of risk, and currently we're fine at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, Bob, just a couple of questions. Sorry, let me just get them up here. In complaints, 2.6, we've got NA for those complaints. Does that mean none, or does that mean not applicable?
We're going to summarise those at the end of the year because we get such a small number of complaints relevant that escalate to the Ombudsman.
Okay, But in that case,
it's more practical to report at the end of the year.
Okay, it'd be good if we get a report at the end of the year. Then, yes, I don't need to see it glued to my eyes with those words unless I need to. There's enough words we're reading already. And in terms of lifelong learning with the active city, numbers are great, but it'd be good to know how full the classes are, if that's possible. Then we know how well the classes are doing. So I don't know if that's a possibility to be tweaked. And that's it for me.
Okay, I can certainly have the discussion with the service on that one.
Brilliant, thank you.
Could somebody not on mute, please? Could you all please check your mute? Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob. Councillor Smith, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, thanks, Bob, for a very comprehensive report. Just one question. Why there's no risk score on the climate emergency issues? Clearly, we need to set targets and assess the risk, and I'd certainly argue it's not green at the moment.
Yes, I think it's still under. It's in a kind of holding pen at the moment. It's following pending the outcome of the climate change working group, and certainly discussions between the chief executive and Nicola Stinson, who's unfortunately sent her apologies today.
Okay, thank you. I'll discuss this with chief executive in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to come in, please? Could I have a proposer for the adoption of the recommendations on this report, please? Councillor Mumford, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Grottick. Thank you. Are there any members against the recommendations for this report, please? No, then the report recommendations are carried. Thank you very much indeed, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah.
Thank you. So item 17 on our agenda are the service plans for the financial year 2021 to 22 in the hands of our Senior Officer for Democratic and Corporate, Tom Walton. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The Council Service Plans for the financial year 2021 to 2022 are appended to this report for endorsement by members. This follows the approval of the updated corporate plan and medium-term financial plan at February's meeting of full Council and completes the main set of corporate planning documents ready for the new financial year. The Chief Executive has revised the service plan template you've previously seen in two main respects for this report. Firstly, to increase the amount of context provided for each service and allow more scope for each service to express themselves in terms of layout and narrative, including their achievements, challenges and performance. And the other change is to simplify the information surrounding each given objective and reduce the number of objectives presented so there is more focus on larger projects and those that are carried out outside of the normal day-to-day responsibilities of services. There's obviously considerable detail contained in the appendices, and we wouldn't expect members to comment on this during today's meeting. However, lead members and all members, for that matter, are encouraged to liaise regularly with senior managers and senior officers to understand the progress being made on the service plan objectives throughout the year, particularly where that relates to their own corporate plan objectives. I'll hand over to the Chief Executive now, who has some further comments to add.
Thank you very much, Tom. Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for all your hard work in coordinating all of this, because it can be quite a beast. I think, Chairman, if you wouldn't mind a couple of minutes just to build on Tom's commentary in the context of this. If you recall last year, I think the service plans came to Council in September. It's my stated aim that we will increasingly move them closer together to the budget. I wasn't able to do it this year, which was a regret, but by next year your service plans will be coming as part of the budget and corporate plan setting process in February. Also, I don't think there was enough time for enough input this year with lead members on the formulation of those plans, so at least they're fully cited by it. So I give an undertaking that will be much more robust next year, Chairman. I think it's worth also giving some members some context. It's not usual, well, it's mixed, to be honest with you, that service plans come to councils across the country. These, in effect, are management documents, and therefore the word endorsement as opposed to approval, I suppose, is appropriate. Many councils don't have service plans coming before them. I was keen that they did, in order that there was transparency both to you and to the public on how we're utilising the funds that you've already allocated to those services and what, in effect, they're going to be focusing on over the next 12 months. Obviously, there's a lot of detail in there, but I'd urge members, obviously I haven't brought all of the officers to the meeting today who would be able to answer the detailed questions, but if there's detailed questions on any of the points in the service plan, please either do them through the lead member or directly to those lead officers highlighted at the beginning of the report. So as I said, these are living documents, Chairman. I would expect them to be altered and reviewed as the year goes on. I mean, if you recall, probably if we'd done service plans in February last year, they would have been all out the window by the COVID announcements in March. And service plans are management tools. They are subject to review, and we will also undertake to do a detailed 6-monthly review of progress. The last thing I think, though, Tom and I are talking about is I've asked all staff this time in their service plans to reflect on the achievements for the last 12 months. And perhaps members might want to take some moments to have a chance and have a read, because it's quite mind-blowing the number of things that this council has managed to achieve despite COVID over the last 12 months. And we're going to explore whether or not there's a way of pulling some of those commentary out in order to put together some sort of annual report on the progress the council's made over the 12 months. But Tom and I need to discuss that in terms of capacity, etc. And lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to all the staff, not only for compiling these documents, but also for outlining the achievements that they've done over the last 12 months. And finally, just one apology from me, Chairman. There's one missing in the pack, which is the planning service plan. Lisa has done the service plan. It was completed in time, but for some reason it fell through the net. My fault. But I've already apologised to Dan, and we'll see whether we need to add it to the next council agenda as an item for information, just for completeness. That's it, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's much appreciated. Though you're apologising for when this is coming through, it's a full 6 months earlier than it was last year, and that's much appreciated by councillors. Thank you. As is all the improvements and work that the council's done in the last 12 months. So thank you very much indeed. Councillor Williams, please.
I really welcome the inclusion of these on the agenda. I take the Chief Exec's point that they don't always go to council, but I found it really good and would totally concur. The thing I found most useful was the area around significant achievements. And if we could do more to get some of that into the public domain, I think it would probably be time really well spent. My only other point was, I may have missed it, but Active Silly and Learn Silly, I didn't see their service plans in there. As I said, it might be my error, but again, it would be useful perhaps to see those if they aren't included.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thank you. Yes, be good to have, Paul's spoken to me, be good to have planning next time, so just doing my lead member due diligence there of sticking up for my officers. Also, just noticed consistency in the documents. Some of the budget stuff is different, some of the organisational stuff is different. Just if we're going to use them as a tool, and they are really useful, agree with Councillor Williams, and then we need to be able to flick through them, pick up stuff easily. So just that consistency in the way they look and what's contained in them would be really good for next time, just so that we can make sure that they are a tool for lead members to report to the public, for the public to refer to on the website, and for the new council to be able to quickly digest what's happened and put some historical context into the decision that they're going to have to be making quite quickly, because as a new councillor you do have to pick up the baton quite quickly. So that'd be good for next time, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. If it's okay, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Absolutely. There was a balance here where I would have liked them to have been more consistent for you this time. I was putting quite a lot of pressure on the staff in order to bring the timeline forward. As I said, I didn't quite hit my target of February, which I will next year, and I certainly didn't hit my target of enough engagement with lead members on them. And the consistency point is well made. So all of those will be taken as actions ahead of the process for the year we're about to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
The other point I was going to make was I'd like to see, as these evolve, a little bit more alignment with the corporate plan as well. I think there was some in terms of the consistency matter, but I felt we could probably do more to pull these in line with the corporate plan.
Thank you very much. Tom, you wish to come in, please?
Yeah, I think you've raised this before, Councillor Williams. It's a really, really good point, and it's definitely a missing portion of our planning process. In order to have really effective set of service plans, which are obviously at the team level, we need to have something above them which coordinates activity across teams. So it's what we're referring to as a delivery plan. That's something we'll be doing in the coming year. And I think that will give you much more indication of where each objective is hitting the marks set out in your corporate plan. And it's much less likely that any of your corporate plan objectives will fall through the net because the team, all the teams have sort of not fully met one of those corporate plan objectives. So I absolutely agree, and that's something we're definitely picking up next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Now, could I please have a proposer for the recommendation, please, to endorse the service plans? Councillor Mumford, seconded by Councillor Marcus. Thank you. Is there any councillor against the endorsement of these service plans, please? No, then they are endorsed. Thank you very much indeed to everybody involved. So we move now to part 2 of our agenda, items 18, 19 and 20, which are for information only. And I would now like to move into part 3, and item 21 on our agenda is the exclusion of the public, that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of that act as amended, being the information about the business affairs of particular persons. Could I please have a proposer, please, for the exclusion of public? Councillor Grosset, thank you, and seconded Councillor Marcus. Is there any member opposed to this recommendation, please? No, then the public are excluded from the further item. Thank you very much.